It spoke as the regional representative of an opulent government. Jesus spoke as the only begotten Son of God who is omnipotent. They lived in two different worlds. Pilate commanded the Roman legions. Jesus could have called 10,000 angels. They lived, I'm telling you, in two different worlds. It's hard to communicate to a non-believer who does not live in or know your world. I'm fitting to help somebody else right now. I'm fitting to help you. Fitting to help you. Tell your neighbor, he's fitting to help us. There are politicians right now who are making decisions about your life right now, making decisions about your future right now, making decisions about your family and your children. And the real tragedy is they live in a different world from your world altogether. There are people in power who have opinions about you based on their privilege of skin color. I'm in the text. Pilate was European. Jesus was not European. They live in a world shaped by European standards of beauty, Moynihan studies, and bell curves. They live in a different world than your world altogether. They are ignorant and arrogant, and these graduates of Harvard and Yale are setting policies for you based on the stupidity of David Hume, Immanuel Kant, Voltaire, George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, Thomas Jefferson, a pedophile, Theodore Roosevelt, and the racist Supreme Court, and the Encyclopedia Britannica. The ignorance and arrogance of white supremacy have the shapers and movers of world policy living in a different world, the world you live in altogether. And the sooner you realize that, the better off you're going to be. The military mindset of a Pontius Pilate was in a different world altogether from the mindset of him who was wounded for our transgressions and bruised for our iniquities. They could not communicate because they were speaking two different languages. Say two different languages. And they could not communicate because they lived in two different worlds. Say two different worlds. Believers, beware. You may find yourself in a conversation with somebody who lives in a different world than your world. Now, look. We get so caught up in that conclusion that we miss something very, very important that pertains to John 18, and it pertains to what Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah said. Look at verse 18 again. They say, we will not serve your God. Tell your neighbor, don't miss this. The God of the oppressor and the God of the oppressed are, by biblical definition, two different gods. Pilate and Jesus were serving two different gods. Not only were they speaking two different languages, not only were they living in two different worlds, but they were also serving two different gods. The God of slavery is a different God from the God of the slave. Listen, the enslaver's God is a different God from the God of those being enslaved. Let me help you. The God of white supremacy is a different God from the God who came to set the captives free. The God who supported apartheid, the God who approves of shock and awe, the God who winks at collateral damage, the God who rubber stamps the racist exploitation of a people and all the world's resources. That ain't the God who took on the form of a servant and became obedient even unto death. Because beware of who you're talking to. You might be talking to somebody serving a different God. Listen, the God who says that black folk are inferior is not the God who said, I made you in my image and you are mine. The God of sexism is not the God of Sojourner Truth or of Harriet Tubman. The God who loves America and America only is not the God whom Jesus said, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. The God of preemptive strikes is not the God of peace. The God of greed is not the God of grace. The God of those who are on the decks of the slave ship is not the God of those who was riding beneath the deck saying, oh Lord, have mercy. The God of a lying president is not the God of a loving provider. The God of the have-mores is not the God of the have-nots. The God who lets the poor die because of selfishness is not the God who became poor for our sakes and who died for our sins. The God of a king who puts people in a fiery furnace is not the God who gets in the furnace along with them people so that when they walk through the fire, their clothes won't even smell like they've been near smoke. And I ain't talking about Allah and Yahweh being two different gods. They're the same God. I'm talking about the God of the slave holder, Nebuchadnezzar, and the God of the slave, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The God of the colonizer, Pilate, and the Italians. And the God of the colonized, that's Jesus, and the Palestinian. Those are two different gods. The God of a king who keeps secret prisons is not the King of Kings who always keeps sacred promises. I'm through, but let me help that last point come alive for you. Say this: the God who keeps secret prisons is not the God who keeps sacred promises.